When I bought my house 2 years ago, I thought I had found a slice of peace, a quiet cul-de-sac, big oak trees lining the road, a tight-knit neighborhood. Everything seemed perfect until Karen moved in next door. Her name wasn't really Karen, of course, but she fit the mold so perfectly it was uncanny. Mid-50s, always wore pastels, had a high-strung voice that could pierce drywall, and acted like she was queen of the neighborhood. She introduced herself on day one with an unsolicited rant about standards, community rules, and the importance of appearances. What I didn't know then was that she was also head of the HOA board, a role she clearly thought made her royalty. At first, her complaints were mild. Your garbage bins are visible from the street. Your grass is 0.5 inches too long. Petty stuff. I nodded, made polite noises, and ignored most of it. But then came the parking. She had a shiny white Lexus SUV, polished so obsessively it looked like it belonged in a showroom. For some reason, despite having a perfectly fine driveway and two-car garage, Karen decided my driveway was her new favorite parking spot. The first time it happened, I assumed it was a mistake. Maybe she had guests over. I let it slide. But it happened again the next day, and the next. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I knocked on her door and asked her to stop. "Excuse me," I said, trying to sound calm. "I noticed your SUV has been blocking my driveway. It's been happening a lot lately, and I'd appreciate it if—" She cut me off with a dismissive laugh. "It's a public street. You don't own the curb." I blinked. "But you're blocking my access. I can't pull in or out when your car's there. You can still use part of the driveway. Just reverse carefully. Besides, I'm only there for a few minutes at a time." That wasn't true. Her few minutes often stretched into hours. I explained again. I asked nicely. I even offered to help her adjust her garage so she could park there more easily, but she refused to budge, literally or figuratively. Then, of course, came the threats. "If you keep harassing me about this, I'll bring it up with the HOA. You're creating a hostile environment." Seriously? So I did what I thought was the mature thing. I called the HOA myself. They said, "We don't mediate parking disputes unless it violates community policy." In other words, Karen was the HOA. She ran the meetings. She wrote the rules. She was the policy. When her car started blocking my driveway again the next week, I called the non-emergency police line. An officer came out, looked around and said, "Well, technically, it's not illegal to park on a public street, even in front of a driveway, unless it's completely obstructed." "But I literally can't get out of my garage." He shrugged. "I'd recommend taking it up with your HOA." Karen must have been watching from her living room, because not even 10 minutes later she was out there with a smug grin, watering her hedges with a manic sort of glee. From that day on, it got worse. She'd park closer and closer, sometimes even touching the edge of my driveway. She knew exactly where the gray legal lines were and danced on them with practiced grace. I started documenting everything. Photos, timestamps, written notes. I installed a camera over my garage, mostly for peace of mind, but it only made her worse. One morning, I woke up to find a passive-aggressive note taped to my door. "If you don't like living in a community with rules, perhaps you should move somewhere without neighbors." And then she added a PS. "Your mailbox doesn't match the HOA's aesthetic. Expect a warning notice." That was it. This wasn't about parking anymore. This was war. But I wasn't going to fight back with notes or complaints. No. I had a better idea, one that would require planning, patience, and a little bit of cunning. Because if Karen wanted to play games she was about to learn, I played to win. After Karen left that note on my door, something inside me snapped. I was done being polite. I was done waiting for the HOA or the police to help. I was going to make her regret ever parking in front of my driveway. But I also knew I had to be smart. If I keyed her car, I'd be arrested. If I had it towed, the HOA would block the paperwork. Karen had turned this neighborhood into her personal fiefdom. That meant if I wanted to win, I had to play outside her rulebook. First step, I started paying attention. I watched Karen's patterns like a hawk. Her Lexus SUV would be in front of my driveway almost every morning between 7:30 a.m. and 10 a.m., then again around 3 p.m. She never parked in front of her own home, only mine. Why? Because she knew it annoyed me. This was personal. So I started mapping her behavior. I took photos, videos, and kept a logbook. When she parked, how long she stayed, where she went. Every detail mattered. Then I noticed something interesting. On Thursdays, she'd leave her car parked in front of my driveway for a yoga class down the street. She'd walk to it in full athletic gear, carrying her little lavender mat and iced coffee like she was a suburban queen. She'd be gone for exactly 90 minutes. That was my opening. I contacted a towing company, but they wouldn't touch the car without police authorization. No surprise there. So I tried something different. I went online and looked into private property towing laws in my state. Turns out I couldn't have a car towed from public street space, even if it was blocking access, unless there was an emergency or it posed a safety hazard. But then I had an idea so devious, so perfect, it almost felt criminal. Except it wasn't. I remembered something my buddy Carlos told me a while back. He manages a small construction company and sometimes rents out flatbed tow trucks for transporting heavy equipment. I gave him a call. "Hey," I said, "hypothetically speaking, what would it cost to rent a flatbed for a few hours, say this Thursday morning?" He laughed. "What are you moving? A tank?" "Nope," I said, "just something stubborn." Carlos owed me a favor, so he sent over one of his drivers, no questions asked. Thursday came. I waited until Karen left for her yoga class. Leggings, ponytail, smug smile, the whole suburban warrior vibe. She walked right past me sitting on my porch and didn't even acknowledge me. As soon as she turned the corner, I waved over the flatbed truck waiting 2 streets away. Now here's the trick. I didn't have the car towed in the legal sense. Instead, we carefully lifted her Lexus onto the flatbed and moved it. 2 miles away to an open commercial lot that Carlos owned, totally private property, gated, monitored, secure. I didn't damage the vehicle, I didn't tamper with it, I didn't steal it, I simply relocated it, temporarily. Then I sat back and waited. An hour later I heard it. The screech, the outrage, the high-pitched, "Where is my car?" I peeked out my window like a kid on Christmas morning. Karen was pacing in front of my driveway, spinning in circles, yelling at her phone. Her hands flailed wildly as she scanned the empty curb like the pavement had personally betrayed her. She ran door to door, asking neighbors if they saw anything. I stepped out and gave her my most innocent look. "Everything all right?" I asked. "My car. Someone stole it." "Oh no," I said, trying very hard not to grin. "Was it parked here?" "Yes, right here, like always." I tilted my head. "Strange. You know, I thought that spot looked clearer than usual this morning." She narrowed her eyes at me. "You didn't see anything?" I shrugged. "Sorry, I was inside. Maybe the HOA can help?" The irony almost killed me. Karen filed a police report, of course. They did the usual runaround, asked her where she parked it, if she locked it, when she last saw it. They asked about possible towing, repossession, or unpaid tickets. She had none of those excuses. And here's the best part. The car wasn't technically stolen. It was sitting on private land, untouched, undamaged, and totally safe. 2 days later, after she had a meltdown on the neighborhood app and threatened lawsuits, I casually called the non-emergency line and said, "Hi, I think I found a white Lexus that may have been reported missing. It's been sitting in a private lot I help manage. No signs of damage. I thought I should call it in." Within an hour, Karen had her car back. But something had changed. She couldn't prove what happened. No damage, no note, no evidence. But she knew it was me, and that ate her alive. She stopped parking in front of my driveway after that, but the war wasn't over yet, because what she did next, that turned everything nuclear. After Karen got her Lexus back, something in her cracked. She didn't say a word to me, but her eyes said everything. That blank suburban smile she wore, gone, replaced with suspicion, rage, paranoia, and the worst part for her? She had no proof. For the first time in her reign of HOA tyranny, Karen couldn't report a violation. She couldn't call the cops. She couldn't even file an HOA complaint because technically, nothing illegal had happened. But of course, that didn't stop her from trying. The next week, I got an official violation notice from the HOA, signed by Karen herself. Your front garden contains unauthorized plant species and ornamental features outside the HOA-approved landscaping policy. She was talking about my rosemary bushes and a small gnome statue my niece had given me. Really. Then came a noise complaint. She claimed I was operating machinery late at night. I was watching a baseball game. Then another warning for unauthorized surveillance equipment, referring to the camera over my garage, which was 100% legal and had been approved when I moved in. It was obvious. Karen wanted revenge. I knew it was only a matter of time before she tried something bigger, and I was right. One night, around 2 a.m., I heard movement outside. Not normal movement. This was weird, fast, sneaky. I checked the garage cam. Karen, in her robe, standing in my driveway. She walked up to the front of my car and did something quick, then darted back to her house. I couldn't tell what she did, but it was enough to raise red flags. In the morning, I checked my car. There, taped to the back bumper, was a plastic bag full of raw fish. Anchovies or sardines, something disgusting and smelly. It had been melting in the heat. I was furious. She was trying to bait me, literally, hoping I'd snap and confront her in front of witnesses, but I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Instead, I made a phone call. Remember my buddy Carlos, the construction guy? Yeah, I called him again. But this time, I didn't want to relocate Karen's Lexus. I wanted it gone, completely. Not stolen, not vandalized, just gone. Carlos laughed when I told him the plan. You're evil, man. I'm just tired of playing defense, I said. So here's what we did. Carlos had just cleared a massive plot of land 20 minutes outside town. He was preparing it for a housing development. It was fenced off, had no surveillance, and was filled with freshly dug trenches and mounds of dirt. Perfect for construction equipment and for hiding things. The following Thursday, Karen went to yoga like clockwork. This time, I didn't just use the flatbed to move her car temporarily. We towed it out to that lot, nice and slow, and lowered it into a trench Carlos had already started digging. Then, we buried it. Covered it completely in loose dirt and construction debris. No damage, no broken windows, no mess, just buried, out of sight, out of reach, gone. When Karen got back from yoga, her screams could have shattered glass. But this time, she didn't get her Lexus back. She reported it stolen again. She ranted on the HOA forums. She handed out flyers. She put up a reward sign in front of her house. I acted shocked, sympathetic, concerned. Do you think it was targeted? Could it be the same person from last time? You should talk to the HOA. I even baked cookies and dropped them off to cheer her up. She looked like she wanted to strangle me. Weeks passed. The Lexus never turned up. Insurance finally paid out, though not without a fight. She had no idea how to explain how the same car could disappear twice in 2 months. The HOA started getting tired of her too. Other neighbors complained about her constant accusations, threats, and obsession with neighborhood order. She was forced to resign from the board due to stress. I kept my rosemary bushes. The gnome got a friend. And Karen? She got a used Toyota Corolla. She doesn't speak to anyone anymore. She avoids eye contact. She parks in her driveway now, every single day. Epilogue. Some things disappear for a reason. Sometimes justice isn't about yelling the loudest. It's about outsmarting the person who thinks they're untouchable. Karen thought she could use rules, titles, and HOA power to bully her neighbors. But in the end, all it took to beat her was a trench, a truck, and a little patience. So, next time you think about blocking someone's driveway, just remember, some cars don't come back.